Happy June and happy Pride, celebrating pride in all of us. All this month, Richard Skipper celebrates those that are making a difference in the LGBTQ community. Never gossipy, the antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you who are here for the first time, my show is all about celebrating. It's about celebrating artists and their body of worth. What makes a great artist? How do they get from point A to point B and beyond? I hope that you enjoy our show today. If you do, and if you don't do so already, please subscribe to Richard Skipper Celebrates on YouTube, because I will be celebrating so many other incredible artists in the days, weeks, and months to come. But before we get there, today we have the one and only John McDaniel in the house.
Hi, Richard.
So thrilled that you're here. We are celebrating Pride. We're celebrating June. We're celebrating summer. We're celebrating the fact that you just did Kristin Chenoweth's boot camp, which
we did,
and so many other things. What are you celebrating today?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm also in the midst of teaching a music theater intensive at Fordham University at Lincoln Center virtually. And I'm madly in love with my students. They are absolutely fantastic. And so that's giving me a lot of life these days, working with them. I'll be with them this afternoon again. And we're working on Cole Porter and Stephen Sondheim right now, two titans of the musical theater who wrote both the words and the music. So it's going really well, and they're doing beautifully. And that's my lifeblood right now, if you know what I mean.
Well, I will also say that this past year, I mean, a lot of people stopped in their tracks. You didn't. I didn't.
No, you didn't. You went very quick. You've been doing this for, more than a year now, right?
Since March of last year, I started with Leslie Ann Warren, a great way to start. And I've been going nonstop since then. But you did these great concerts, which I loved tremendously. Was it difficult for you to make that transition to doing work virtually? I mean, you've had a television career, obviously.
Yeah, it's weird because I did have a little experience with the camera and sort of figuring out. I didn't have to set up the lights and the sound myself before when I was on Rosie, but I got to know how to do it pretty quickly. I think I was stunned like everybody else for a minute. I mean, if you started in March, that's impressive. It took me a few months. I had, of course, a whole summer of 2020 planned, big concerts and shows and development things and new musicals that I'm working on, and so many things. In Kristin's camp too last summer, we just had to not do it because nobody knew what was happening, and of course it wouldn't be safe for people to gather. So I was then sitting home thinking, what am I going to do? I was talking to Jim Caruso one day, and he said, and we were talking about how great it was that Billy Stritch and Linda Lavin had started doing those Wednesdays. You remember that?
Absolutely.
And it was so great. And Jim said, you should do that. And I was like, what are you talking about? He said, well, you can play and sing for yourself. You're self-contained. Everybody loves you. And so you should try it. And so I did on Mother's Day. I launched Sunday Tea with John McD, which I did for a year. I did it for 7 Sundays in a row. And I did it Mother's Day to Father's Day, which felt perfect. And I was enjoying it so much, I didn't want to not do it, but also I didn't want to do it every week because, as you know, and you've been doing sometimes every day. Do you do this every day?
I do it almost every day. I mean, a few days I take off. Well, when I first started doing it, I was doing it weekly. And all of a sudden, people were saying, I'm getting calls from publicists.
Yeah.
So you get my on. And,
yeah.
in this business that sometimes things are time sensitive.
Sure.
And I post it, if I put off several weeks,
Yeah,
the opportunity's gone. But I want to ask you, are both of your parents still with us?
they are, and they're living in the house I grew up in St. Louis, which is really fantastic. I'm going to go visit them next month, and they've been so supportive all through the years.
So we'll start with your mom, Jane. It is Jane, isn't it?
It is Jane, yeah.
So you started taking piano lessons with your mom, Jane.
I did.
And so we owe all of this to her.
Pretty much.
Jane, we raise a glass to you. All of you.
Yes, I started when I was 5 years old, although music had been in the house because she taught in the living room. So when I was born, there was music in the house, Mozart, Bach, and Beethoven wafting through the air. And so I feel like it was seeping in already when I was just a month old. And then all through my toddler years and the terrible twos and all of that. But then when I was 5, it seemed like time to sort of do it. And I wish I had practiced. My mom was a saint, by the way. She is a saint. The mom knew that the student wasn't practicing, but the student would sort of cram the night before the lesson, the weekly lesson. And so then I would get in and I knew how to do it. So the piano teacher was like, oh, okay, good. And I'm encouraged. So then we just went on. But then when I got to be in sort of junior high, she realized that, and she's purely classical, and she could see that I was interested in pop music and Broadway and Hollywood. And so she wisely put me with another teacher, Elaine Boyd, rest her soul. She was amazing. And she got me into ragtime and boogie woogie and all kinds of other stuff that was just blowing my young mind. And I never looked back.
Well, in my research, I discovered that I was born exactly 3 weeks ahead of you.
Really? I love that.
We're both 61 babies.
Yeah.
And 61 is on the horizon for both of us.
It's so true. How did this happen?
I know. I was thinking the other day, it seems like it was just yesterday that I was 30 years old, and here 61 is the next one up for both of us.
It's a wild thing. You kind of feel the same, though, weirdly?
I feel the same. The aging process, it's funny. I was watching All in the Family the other night, and they were celebrating Archie Bunker's, are you ready for this? 50th birthday.
Wow.
And he looked a lot older than 50 on that show.
Yeah, I know. It's true. It does seem like that has changed the way,
So
when we were kids.
So both of us coming from the same era, did you grow up in a television household as well?
We had a TV, but we didn't sort of gather around it, oddly. I mean, sometimes we did. But I was always off doing play rehearsal. And I had a theater in the basement, so I was always down there banging, putting something up. My dad helped me build a proscenium, and we had lights, and I had sound cues, and we did plays from all through junior high. So I was always kind of into the live thing really early on.
Now, when you said that you were doing plays, in what capacity? Were you an actor, or were you playing the music?
Well, I was sort of the impresario. I put the whole thing together and chose the plays. I would go to the library and look through where the plays that might be appropriate, and they were little weird, like Dramatist Play Service 45-minute plays. Muggsy's Merry Christmas is a title I remember. What the heck is that? I don't know. It was a guy who burgled this house. He broke in, and then he wound up having the most wonderful Christmas with the family, who was very forgiving. So it was weird little shows, but it gave me a lot of experience. I had been in children's theater at the Webster Groves Theater Guild, and they had they were in an old house in Webster, and they did plays on the second level. And so I had seen sort of a template of how I could make a theater in my house, and I did that.
So, but when did you start getting exposed to theater outside your home? You grew up in St. Louis. Was there a lot of opportunities for your family to go and see live concerts and theater? Absolutely.
So the repertory, the Loretta Hilton Repertory Theater, was the professional theater in St. Louis, and they had a rep company and fantastic actors, and they did show. And we always went to those plays. We went to all the Theater Guild plays. We were always going out to see concerts and live music and theater, and so that was instilled in me really early as well. In fact, it was at the Rep that I used to look through the playbill or the program, and I would see, oh my gosh, Carnegie Mellon. All these actors went to Carnegie Mellon. What is this place you speak of? And so I began to have an interest in Carnegie Mellon, and I wound up going there, as you know, because you did research.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want to get ahead of you, but that's where that happened.
But it's one thing, to be doing theater, local theater, etc. It's a completely different ball of wax when that light bulb or that bug bites you and you go, oh my God, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Well, so speaking of that, when I was 13, I went to see Mac and Mabel at the St. Louis Muni with Burnett Peters and Bob Preston. It was on its way, to New York, and it was life-changing because my dad's sister's husband worked for a company that got really good seats, and so we were sitting down front, and it was life-changing. It was fantastic. I also saw either that summer or a summer right near there, Patti LuPone in The Baker's Wife. So I saw her belting out Meadowlark when she was, we were all so young.
Little did you know.
Little do I know. I would record that song with her years later. It's so weird.
Yes. But for those one or two people who don't know, explain what the Muni is.
Okay.
The
Muni is it's a giant, I think it's 13,000 seats in St. Louis, outdoor, built into a beautiful big hill. And once in 76, I saw Carol Channing do Dolly, Zero Mostel do Fiddler, Yul Brynner do The King and I, and Angela Lansbury do Mame. These were, touring well after they'd done them on Broadway, but it was such an education. And I remember, so many shows that I can remember, but it was a fantastic. I knew that I had the bug. And you know what, Richard, you'll get this. Follies came to St. Louis. And it was a few years before that. I think it was 71, 72. It was on its way to the Schubert in LA. And I remember thinking, Follies, this looks like too adult for me. I wouldn't enjoy this. And I didn't go. And I could kick myself every day. But anyway, it's
and who was in that cast?
That was the Broadway cast. They were, mostly, I think. Mm-hmm. It was the cast that was going to LA, and they were coming across the country. And the St. Louis Muni was the only stop in the middle, as I recall.
Now, Carol Channing always used to say it was very important for her to traipse around the country, and she did, more so than anyone I know.
True.
Because she said if you perform all over the country, people get to know who you are, and when they come to New York, they want to return the favor. And I've always liked that. Do you like being on the road?
I do. I have a fine time. I did my first big tour was Andrew Lloyd Webber's Starlight Express, which was a giant tour. I was the associate conductor, and we were 9 months on the road, and I had the best time. But it's grueling, pretty much every week. Sometimes we'd sit down for 2 weeks, but mostly a week, 1 week or so. You're packing, and you're getting on the bus to the airport, and then you're unpacking a little bit, and it's a lot. But I do like traveling because I've always been a traveler, thanks to my mom and dad also.
Well, going back to, you said at 13 you saw Mac and Mabel. That was a life-changing event for you at the Muni. Was it at that moment that you said, this is where I want to go with my life?
I think it was all of these things. I had few interests outside of the theater and music and musicals. It just started to feel, I used to check out all the records at the Kirkwood Library. You can only take 10 at a time. So I would check out 10 Broadway shows, bring them home.
You're telling my story.
Record them. And then I had this incredible big sort of reel-to-reel collection of all these cast recordings. Quamina and Keene and Kismet was, 1 week because they were all the Ks. And so it was clear to me from an early age that musicals spoke to me.
And were you trying to replicate when you were recording on the piano what you were hearing on these albums and these records?
What I was meaning is I'd record the cast album, so I would have a copy at home. But I've always had a really good ear, and I could sort of pick anything out and play it back pretty quickly. That was a real gift.
Now, you had an ace in your pocket with your mom being a music teacher. When you went to your parents and said, I think I want to do this as a career, what were their thoughts and reactions to that?
I think my dad was a lawyer, and I think I don't know that he really wanted me to go into law, but it was so clear to all of us that the theater was my thing. I mean, I had one in the house. I went to the theater all the time. I was in musicals. I was in a children's theater musical group when I was in junior high, and we did West Side Story and Damn Yankees and Plain and Fancy, and I was just living musicals from the time I was, so young. So I don't think they were surprised, and they were really encouraged me to audition for many schools in case I didn't get Carnegie Mellon, which was my first choice. I also applied to go to Northwestern and Columbia and Indiana University, and was accepted all four. So it was a beautiful, gorgeous thing to have a choice, and I'm so happy that I got to go to CMU.
Well, what would you say would be the biggest impact that Carnegie Mellon had on you, both as an artist and as the man that you've become?
Well, it's a formative time when you when you leave the house and you go off and live in another city. And Pittsburgh is a massive city with museums and ballet and opera. So it was an opportunity, and it was closer to New York. It was like almost to New York. It was an opportunity to really sort of find myself and be myself. And very quickly, in fact, 3 weeks into my freshman year, we had a big, beautiful dance studio that had a great piano, and it reverberated so gorgeously. I would go up there and play into the night. And this is a crazy story, but it's true. One night I was playing away my show tunes and whatever, and probably singing, and somebody peeked in the door and they were like, "Who are you?" And it was Robbie Marshall, who was a little older than I am. But he was like, "We need somebody to take over at the show I'm doing out at the Green Tree Marriott. Are you available on Fridays and Saturdays?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So really quickly, I was sort of in not only doing all the stuff at Carnegie Mellon, but the stuff in Pittsburgh and playing for Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers. I was sort of one of the subs who went around with him and did shows, and he was fantastic. And so Pittsburgh really became a second home for me very, very quickly.
And how did the move to New York happen for you?
So when I was about to graduate from Carnegie Mellon, I got a gig singing and dancing in a 4-person Broadway review on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean. And I couldn't pass it up. So I left the day before the actual graduation. I never walked the cap and gown thing. I was like, gotta go. I'm going to Athens, hopped on a ship and spent 6 weeks there and met a whole bunch of new friends, fell in love, moved to LA. And so I was I also had a feeling, Richard, it's funny, but New York was intimidating. New York is intimidating. And I sort of was hesitant to just move there and see what would happen. It's a scary thing. So now I had all these LA connections and moved to LA, and it wound up being a fantastic 10 years in Los Angeles, Hollywood, working with a lot of great old stars and on fun projects, and ultimately working in a Civic Light Opera, which was where we did big musicals with Carol Burnett and Nell Carter and all these. Elaine Stritch was in Pal Joey, the first show that I did there, where she sang Zip, which she had sung in 1952. So it was a great, great learning experience. And then I'd worked with Jeff Calhoun on a Alan and Marilyn Bergman retrospective called How Do You Keep the Music Playing? And we really hit it off. And he said, I'm going to do this Broadway revival of Grease. Would you like to move to New York or come to New York and create new arrangements for Grease on Broadway? And I thought about it for about half a second and said yes. So the moving to New York was a natural sort of extension of everything that had come before.
Well, the interesting thing, you talk about falling in love, and that completely throws a monkey wrench for all the right reasons into life plans. Did you have a game plan with what you wanted to do with your career? Or were these things just happening as a result of being at the right place at the right time? Obviously, the talent is there, and knowing the right people.
I think, always who you know is the thing. Yeah. But Broadway had always been sort of the goal, one of the big dreams. I didn't really have a plan of how to get there. And when I was in LA, I didn't necessarily see that as a path to Broadway, even though my friends, it was brewing. I did actually, when I was still living in LA, we did the original cast of Company concert reunion at Long Beach, which was a sensational experience to have that original cast back together, including Dean Jones, who, as you know, had left
Right.
Before. He'd opened it and then he kind of split, and it was weird, and so it was really healing for everyone who was there. And that went so well in LA that we brought it to New York. So there were things. I had done a little show called Blame It on the Movies before that, and then that came to the Criterion Center off Broadway. So that was my first New York thing. So I was always like, this is feeling like someday. And then Grease brought me there, permanently, and I was in New York for 25 years.
Wow. Well, when you came to New York, was it an easy town for you to acclimate yourself to? Had your family been to New York to see Broadway shows?
They had brought my sister and I many times through the years, so I knew it. And when I was at Carnegie Mellon, I would come for weekends. People's Express used to have $19 round trip tickets, so we would hop on the plane and go to New York and see a bunch of shows on the weekend, come back and get back to school. So I got to know New York pretty early on. I love New York. I'm so happy.
What was the first Broadway show that you saw?
The Magic Show at the Court.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the next day, or even that night, I was walking up Broadway singing Lion Tamer and West End Avenue, all the words I could remember, and the melody was already kind of in me, and crazy.
So when you first came here, where did you first live? And I have to ask you this. I mean, you have made your entire career in this profession, God bless you and kudos to you for that. You've never had to do any other odd jobs, I have
been so lucky. I've never done anything but music and theater.
Knocking on wood. I don't want to tempt the fate.
I know. Yeah, it continues.
So you come to New York and you are working on Broadway. When did the name John McDaniel start circulating among other people that you have to work with him? Let's get him involved. Was there a particular moment where you felt that you had actually arrived? And I'm talking, of course, before the Rosie O'Donnell Show. Yeah,
I mean, I think that excitement of being on Broadway and walking every day, eight times a week to the stage door, was appropriately intoxicating, and really, I never took it for granted. I just absolutely loved that. Still do, going to the concert stage door or whatever. But I think that very quickly there were other opportunities and other things that were happening. At the same time as we were doing Grease, Tommy Tune was starring in a show called Busker Alley, which was also called Buskers, and it was called Stage Door Charlie. It had a long life on the road, sort of sorting it out. But Grease ran for almost 4 years on Broadway, and that was really beautiful and we had a really nice tour that was out for a couple of years. So the money was coming in, and I was feeling really good. And I can remember, I conducted Grease on Broadway for the first, I think, 7 months. And then I became the music supervisor, and I would check in on the show and put the new people in. And you may remember, everybody was in that show. We had a new person going in about every 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe sometimes more. So I was often at the theater, but I wasn't in the pit 8 shows a week anymore. But I do remember one day I was conducting the exit music, and these two guys were hanging out here, and one of them was David Friedman. And David said to me, "Did you do these arrangements?" And I said, "I did." He goes, "Wow, they're really something." And that sort of, because of course I knew who David was. And it was one of those impactful moments of like, you're on the right path. This is going well. This is a good thing. So it just felt right. But then I got into Busker Alley, and we were, on the road trying to make that show better. We actually closed down the tour, came back to New York for 3 weeks, and with a whole new book that Peter Stone wrote, revamped the whole show and went back out. And all of a sudden we were getting good reviews, and it was like very encouraging. And the St. James was all painted in New York.
I was just about to say, I can still see that mural. It was unbelievable.
Leroy Neiman made this gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. So we were coming in, and a week before we were to come into tech on Broadway, Tommy broke his foot in Tampa, Florida, right in front of my face. It was near the end of the show, and he came down from one of those poles, and he just went white, and he kind of hobbled off stage. Guys helped him, and he waved for the curtain call, but it was really serious. So you went to the emergency room, and very quickly we realized, because we still had a second week in Tampa, so we had to do a show on Tuesday without Tommy. And so 3 guys had to play the role. One did the tap dancing, one did the other dancing, and one did the acting part. And we sort of
testament to Tommy Tune.
Indeed. We explained it to the audience, and it was pretty terrific. But so we hobbled back. That's a bad choice of words. We came back to New York with our, really glum, like, am I ever going to work again? Broadway was canceled immediately, and it was, it was just a real blow. Like, this is insane. And then 2 days later, Rosie called me.
Excuse me but before we get there,
yeah.
What was the time frame from the moment that you got involved on that project until Tommy, broke his ankle?
Well, actually, even before I came to live in New York, I had done some demos of Busker Alley with the Sherman brothers who lived in LA. Mm-hmm. We went into a recording studio, and Megan Mullally actually sang the role of Libby. Mm-hmm. And Tommy sang his role of Charlie. And so I had been part of the development process on that show for a long time, way before Grease. So it was kind of percolating all through there. And then 1995 was the big, so Grease was still running, and then we were focusing on Busker Alley, like 95.
Now, this, of course, is based on a Vivien Leigh film. The history of that show, I mean, that could make a show in itself.
Truly.
But, there you are working towards this major goal of Broadway, and the buzz was unbelievable. As you just mentioned, the mural, everything was there. Then how do you get through something like this psychologically and emotionally?
Well, I don't know, because I didn't have to. I mean, I was saved in a way. I was so down. I mean, I say 2 days later, it might have been a week. I remember the feeling of, oh, this is horrible. We have put our life, our soul, our everything, our hearts into this show, and all of a sudden the rug is pulled out. There's no show. What do you mean? We're all just scattered to the wind. So then I did get a phone call from Rosie, who said, I'm going to be doing this talk show. Would you be interested in being the band leader on the show? And we had known each other way before Grease too in LA. We had been at the same parties, and sometimes I'd be at the piano and she'd be singing. And she came to see Patti LuPone, the show that I did with Patti at the Westwood Playhouse. We did a couple of weeks run there, and Rosie came a couple of times, and we'd go across the street to the hotel and we'd sing. And so I already knew that she was sort of in the thing. In fact, it's a funny story. Do you have time for a quick Grease?
Oh, this is your time.
So I knew Rosie, and Rosie knew me, and Fran Weisler, who was producing Grease. So I'm still living in LA, right? Fran calls and says, "Darling, I want to have Rosie O'Donnell come to your house, and she needs to sing for you, and you let us know if she would be acceptable, to play Rizzo in our Grease." And I was like, that's such a great idea. Of course. So then Rosie calls me, we set it up. She comes over, and I open the door, and she's rolling her eyes like, okay, let's go through the motions. So she sang at my piano, which I still have right over there. There are worse things I could do. And we went through it, and it was fine. Her voice is what her voice is. It's not going to change the world, and she knows it. But so we hugged, and she left. And then I called Fran and said, she's fantastic. And so Rosie and I were friends from then on, and she was great in the show. And man, did she put butts in seats. That was an insane experience pre-Broadway. I'd never seen stage doors like that, where people were screaming for autographs and holding up Flintstones dolls and crazy stuff. I mean, it was my first exposure to that kind of zeitgeist fame. It was wild.
Now, when the show began, I remember I was in stock. I was at Theater by the Sea in Matuna, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And we all stopped to watch the first episode of the Rosie O'Donnell Show.
June 10th, 1996.
Which was incredible. Congratulations. You just had a major anniversary. Were you surprised at the impact that this show began to have?
Oh, yeah. It was night and day. I went from being someone who could walk down the street, no one looking at me, just walking, to oh, there's that guy. I mean, it changed just overnight, because certainly across the country, I think we had ratings that were second only to Oprah's premiere, her debut that she had her first day. So it was, and everybody was talking about it, and everybody was watching it. And, of course, anybody who loves Broadway was, tuning in, because we had so many opportunities to feature Broadway stuff. And that was a dreamy thing.
And she gave so many people, Kristin Chenoweth, I remember singing Taylor the Latte Boy on the show. And so many people. And that was the first exposure for a lot of people that they were getting with these major stars. Do you think that a show such as that could succeed today? And why do you think that we don't have something currently like that on TV?
I mean, I think it came along at the perfect time. We still, 1996, there were still, the Madeline Kahns, and people were still it was just an incredible time to do a show. This is 5 years before 9/11. So we were all kind of in this dreamy, it was such an innocent comparatively.
Absolutely.
So, and it was, life wasn't breezy for everybody, but it was a great place to come and feel happy. I always say I always felt that it was like going to the clubhouse, and Rosie was the president and I was the music guy, and we had the audience, and it was 5 hours of live joy every week. And it was hard to keep that up. Don't get me wrong, but it was joyous.
Well, I have to ask you, I mean, with everything that you're doing, and to win an Emmy Award, I mean, first of all, 6 nominations.
Or 10, maybe. I don't know. I was nominated in different categories as the music guy and as the producer on the show. So,
right. So when, where, and how, where were you when you first heard that you had been nominated for an Emmy Award? And what was the impact that had on you, again, psychologically?
I mean, I was Rosie's date for the first Emmys at Radio City when she won her first Emmy. So, and I had not yet become a proper producer on the show. And I had been nominated for music direction and did not win it. I don't remember who did, but anyway, there I am with her. And that was such an impactful night. She was wearing the white thing, and she talked about when she used to go to Radio City with her mom and sit up and have lemon drops. And it was,
I remember that.
It was just so fantastic. And then once I became a producer on the show, I was then nominated for music direction and as a producer on the show. And the show was winning during those years. So I remember winning my first, and it was super fun. It was great. It was great. We would carry them through the city, and go to the parties and go home and stick it down and say, wow, that was a night. That was a lot.
I want to talk about the transition for you to become a producer, because you've gone on to produce many other things since then. Was that an easy transition for you? What was the most difficult learning curve going from the world that you were so comfortable in into a whole new realm in this business?
Well, I began to produce records first. Barry Weiss, we did Annie Get Your Gun on Broadway with Burnett, and which was in '99. So we were 3 years into Rosie.
And a Grammy.
And what's that?
And a Grammy.
Yeah, right. So Barry Weitzer said, "I'd like you to produce the cast recording." And we were in Washington, D.C. At the Kennedy Center pre-Broadway, and I thought, wow, I don't know if I know how to do that, which is exactly what I'd said when Rosie said, "I'd like you to be the band guy." Like, I don't know I didn't tell her that, but I said to myself, I don't know how to do that. But you know, in life, as we know, you're offered opportunities, and if you just figure it out. So we produced Annie Get Your Gun, and I was nominated for the Grammy, and that was tremendous, and then won the Grammy. And it was around that time that I became a producer. I was sort of elevated to, I had been producing a lot without the credit. So it became time for, and that was a tremendous opportunity to become one of the producers of that show.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about the impact that your mom has had on your career. I want to go to your father for a moment. Your father is an attorney, and everybody needs a great attorney in this business. Have you gone to your father for advice on any of the decisions that you've made in your career?
Oh, I always ask him. He's a great sounding board for what to do and how to sort through difficult situations if they arise. He's always a great sounding board for that. Continues to be, for sure. And it was my dad who took us traveling when we were young. So when I was 10, we went to London, Paris, and Copenhagen, and my little head was like, "What is this? This is so fantastic." So my worldview was opening up too as a result of him taking us traveling, which I'm so grateful for.
And with everything that's happened with you, John, what was the biggest learning curve for you going from one level to a whole different level? And, and what was, and I also want to ask in conjunction with that, the most difficult time that you've gone through in this business, without, of course, mentioning any names or circumstances that will give that away.
Learning curve, I think, probably was gearing up for and launching the Rosie O'Donnell Show, because it was such another level of the suits, the Warner Brothers suits, and that whole angle of things. Going to work at 30 Rockefeller Center and being on the 8th floor right next to Saturday Night Live, and it was like, well, this is real. This is really happening. But we did some evergreen shows before we went on the air. So we had some practice runs, and I just give Rosie so much credit because she let me do what I do. I remember the first day at the studio, I went and plopped down on her couch and I said, "No, what do you want me to do?" Just do what you do. And it hit me like, oh my gosh, she just gave me the confidence to go and do. So I wrote the theme song. We recorded it, put the whole animation together. I wrote a lot of the bumpers that we went in and out to commercial. And then I got to play, Chim Chimney and all the great, Hello Dolly and all the great songs that I knew always with my fantastic band. So it was a heady time, but we had to get ready really quickly. And that was but we got there. And
what was the turnaround time on that? I mean, from the moment that you got the green light that this was happening until it's showtime, folks.
Something like 6 or 8 weeks. It was
wow.
Pretty cool. It was pretty quick.
Wow.
Insane. But
everybody appeared on that show. What was the biggest surprise for you on the show of the celebrities that you were going, I cannot believe that I'm in the same room with this person? And I will say that they were in the same room with you.
Well, I know I just mentioned Madeline Kahn, but she's a great example because I was on a train. we did the show in the morning, and then I was going to Baltimore to check in on the Grease tour, which was out, and either to put somebody new in or just to check up on it and make sure we were still tight. And on the road, I got a call that I needed to call Madeline Kahn, who was going to be on the show the next day. And so I wound up in my Baltimore hotel room calling Madeline Kahn at home, and we talked, and it was so impactful because I had seen On the 20th Century when she was in it, and all the films. I mean, it sticks out in my mind as a vivid memory. I was off on the Grease tour in the hotel calling Madeline Kahn about Rosie the next day because I was going to go back up and do the show again with her. So I mean, it was heady times. It was a lot. It was great.
Well, I want to talk about some of the other areas in your life as well. And let's start with Kristin Chenoweth's boot camp.
Yeah.
J. Alexander, Kristin Chenoweth, of course, Celeste Simone, who I love. What a great team. How did you first get involved with this? And if you can tell everyone a little bit about the impact that this boot camp is making.
Absolutely. So 2 years ago, Richard J. was going to be with Barbra Streisand in London, so he couldn't do boot camp. So he called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in spelling me this summer as the camp director?" And I again said yes immediately. And then, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that, but of course you do. And so we had a wonderful time in 2019. And then we were gearing up for 2020, and Richard was going to be back, and he said, "Let's be co-directors. Let's do it together." And I thought, what a great idea. And then COVID happened, so we didn't do it. But this year, we were co-camp directors with Kristen. We took our core team to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and ran it out of the Performing Arts Center, but the campers were virtual because it's still kind of early. And when we had to press the button in sort of February, we didn't really know much about vaccine rollout and stuff, so we had to make a decision to go online. So we did that. And this year we had campers from 8 countries and 134.
Wow.
We had 134 campers from 36 states and 8 countries around the world. And it was spectacular. It was really great. We checked in with, it was from morning until night. And we had so many master classes and rehearsals. We put together numbers for the Christie Awards, which happens at the last night of camp. And we give some fun awards, and it really came off beautifully. And kids were impacted. I'm still getting messages from kids who were changed and given an opportunity to be seen.
Did you say changed?
For good.
For good.
It's true.
No, that's great. That is so wonderful.
It's true.
Anyone who's watching, if they want to get kids that they know or involved, what is the criteria, number one, and how do they get involved with this?
Well, they can go to kcbbc.camp is the website, or just Google it. And the age, I don't want to say it wrong. I think it's 13 to 18 approximately. Maybe it's 14 to 18, whatever it is. For insurance reasons, it is. And it's a spectacular opportunity to get to have an opportunity to speak and work with Kelly O'Hara and Marissa Jared Winokur and John Tartaglia and Kevin Chamberlain, and just on and on and on. Fantastic folks.
You couldn't get names for this, you're
No,
saying?
we couldn't get anybody.
No, that's just incredible. And again, as you mentioned also at the beginning of the show, you're also teaching now.
Yes.
How did that come about? And what are you learning about yourself as a teacher?
Oh, it's hard. It's exhausting because you want to be there for every kid at every moment. I'm the artistic director, as you know, at the O'Neill for the Cabaret and Performance Conference. So I have a sense of, running a conference, a festival of performances, and that is also exhausting. But this sort of, also I must say, doing it online is a big part of why it's even more feels more exhausting, I think, in a good way, in a positive way. We're getting a lot of good work done, but I'm learning also that I love it. I love to inspire young folks and give back. It feels good.
Well, let me ask you this. Looking back over the past year and a half with what we've all gone through, what is the biggest impact that COVID has had on you beyond the obvious things that we're all going through? But what are some of the things that have changed within yourself in terms of the way that you do business and things that you will hold on to moving forward?
I think because I think we're still in it, so it's hard to know. I think we're all traumatized to some degree or another that we are trying to work through or understand or deal with. But I think the art lives on, the desire to tell a story and to be in the room where it happens, and that has not gone away and won't go away no matter what happens. We will always have this need and desire to be together. Hopefully not on Zoom, but be in a room together to tell a story. And that's, we're seeing it starting to come back. We're going back on stage at the O'Neill in August, which I'm really, really excited about, and we'll never take for granted ever again. It's a lot of things. I also think that we will probably move forward with an element of the virtual world. Probably we are going to do some virtual master classes at the O'Neill. Faith Prince is going to teach from Sacramento. Betty Buckley is going to teach from Texas, and Barb Younger is going to teach from London. And so they don't have to leave home. We'll have them on. We have the technology now. They can do incredible work with all of us who will be in person at the O'Neill. So we're able to bring kind of the best of that virtual aspect, I think, forward with us as we move through the world.
And you also made the decision to leave New York. You're no longer living in New York. I won't say where you are unless you want to say.
I moved to South Florida.
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
What was the decision that caused you to move to South Florida?
I think 25 years in New York felt pretty great. I'd done pretty much everything I ever wanted to do. My partner Charlie's mom lives down here. And every time we were, in the last sort of 3 years, we would fly down and we'd get off the plane and feel that beautiful warmth, in November. And I said to
There's
Charlie,
nothing like stepping off of the plane. I feel the same way when I go to California and I step off in the winter. It's like,
it's fantastic. So I said to Charlie, now, why don't we live down here? And so we kept saying that, and we finally said, well, we should. And it just felt like the right time. So summer of 2019, we moved down here and bought a house, and we just love it so much.
The right time to move. It surely was.
Wound up being kind of fortuitous.
Well, I mean, we're living pretty much. I mean, like you and I sitting here. This is the first time that you and I have ever spoken on this level. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
But we're living pretty much in a virtual world. I mean, part of me, I love New York. If I was to ever leave New York, I think Palm Springs is where I would want to go. One of my favorite places to go. But did it feel difficult for you leaving New York when you do, even after 25 years, you have definite roots here?
Yeah, it wasn't difficult because I know that I can always come back, and I will. In fact, 2020, I had 2 big things that were going to happen in New York that were canceled. So yes, I have roots there, but I still will go often to New York and LA and everywhere to do what I do. So it feels good to have this be the home base now and go anywhere, London, wherever I wind up going for work and play.
And how do you see theater coming back in New York? And do you have any projects that hopefully we will see in New York in the near future?
I hope so. I've been developing a really interesting show called Lights Out, Nat King Cole with Coleman Domingo and Patricia McGregor. We've been, now I think it's like 4 or 5 years since we did the world premiere in Philly, outside of Philly in Malvern at People's Light Theater. Then we did a show, we did a production out at the Geffen in LA in 2018. And we were supposed to get together for like a New York workshop. Dule Hill is playing Nat, and Daniel J. Watts, who's had such great success in Tina as Ike, plays Sammy Davis, and they're both beyond brilliant.
Wow.
The whole show is fantastic, and we're trying to move that to come to New York. One of our producers has the idea to do it first in London, which would be fine with me. And then, but we do want to bring that to New York. So that's percolating, along with some other things.
And I want to go full circle, going back to St. Louis. Have you conducted at the Muni?
I have never conducted, but I've had my orchestrations played there, which is equally thrilling. The very first show that Mike Isaacson did when he took over about 8 years ago, I'm making that up, I don't know, a while ago, was a production of Pirates that Gilbert and Sullivan's Pirates of Penzance. Nell Benjamin, Gordon Greenberg, and I took it apart and put it back together again, set it in the Caribbean, sort of like the Pirates of the Caribbean. And we were the first show that Mike did there. So I was certainly there and supervising, but I wasn't with a stick, but I would be happy to.
Well, everyone.
I did conduct the St. Louis Symphony many, many, many times through the years.
Madeline Kahn did Hello, Dolly there. Did you see her production of Dolly?
I did not. I don't know where I was, but I didn't. I would love to have.
Yeah, Ray Reams directed. And I want to ask you, if you don't mind my going there, we are right now in Pride Month.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what does Pride mean for you personally?
I think that, well, it's a funny thing because I have always been very comfortable being gay and being out. When we were on Rosie, we were asked not to talk about it. So this is 1996, before Ellen, before Will and Grace. It was a long time ago. And so we were, but Rosie and I would talk at the beginning of every show, as you know. And so often my partner at that time, his name was Glenn. And I would say, oh, Glenn and I went to so-and-so. Oh, how's Glenn? Oh, he's good. He's good. So we were, sort of dancing around that thing but unable to fully be ourselves. So that, and then ultimately, Rosie had a big coming out before we went off the air. And so then it was, times were changing and things were evolving. So it was really a weird thing for me to be on a big show and not be able to be open about that. That was tough. Actually.
When that happened, what was the big impact that had on the show itself?
I don't know. I think we were just getting more real, more, layers of the onion were peeling away, and we were just getting a little. Now that doesn't. She still wants to have Tom Cruise cut her yard, by the way, with no shirt on. I mean, that's not ever going to change.
Okay.
But and who wouldn't, frankly?
Mm-hmm.
But I think nowadays Pride is. Charlie and I went to Pride here in Florida last week. In fact, you may have read about the pickup truck that wound up killing somebody. They had this accident at the beginning of the parade route, so the parade never happened.
Wilton Manors,
and the mayor very quickly said this is a terrorist attack, almost as a reflex, not reflux.
Both will work in this manner, I will say, because it does feel like reflux. It's a knee-jerk reaction that we're all having.
Exactly.
So it happens now.
So I think it's important to celebrate Pride every year. It's a struggle, always continues to be. We live in a very bizarre world where there's so much hate. It's just, we have to keep putting ourselves out there, I think.
Well, with everything that we've gone through this past year, I want to ask you, do you consider yourself an activist? Were you very much an activist before the events of the past couple of years, or where do you fit on that spectrum?
I would be happy to be more of an activist, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But I feel like my lifeblood is the arts, and but if I was ever asked to participate, I've done tons of benefits and fundraisers, and I'm always available for stuff like that. So,
well, you just did a major Pride event virtually. Is that was that something you just finished, or is that something that's coming up?
So that was another thing that happened last summer when we were in lockdown. I was asked to music direct and produce the Playbill Pride Spectacular, and that was a great experience. One of my first big virtual experiences, creating tracks and working with artists on Zoom and then putting it all together, and it came out great. We're eligible for the Emmy, so we're excited and hopeful that we'll be nominated. But then it happened again this year. In fact, this Saturday night is the culmination of Playbill Pride online, and with a lot of wonderful artists, and we're really excited about that live streaming.
Now, to wrap up, I've got 5 very quick questions that I want to ask you. These are questions that are sent to me. They're not questions that are specific to you, but just questions, and I randomly pulled 5 this morning.
Okay.
And the question is, what is the easiest money that you've ever made in this business?
Oh, I guess it's the theme song for the Rosie O'Donnell Show, because I wrote it in about 10 minutes, and it built my swimming pool. I mean, it was like the residuals. I think, when you write New York, Candor, that mailbox money will come forever, and it will come big. And our show was, the theme was on the show every day. Mm-hmm. So it's like ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So that's probably the easiest.
Okay. What would you find the hardest about? Let me see if I could even read my writing. Let's see. What is the one thing that you are proudest of in your life outside of your career?
I think that my family and I are very close. We're really tight. We support one another, and we're there for one another, and we visit often, and it's precious.
And what was the one thing that you worried about your parents growing up?
Oh, growing up. I thought you were going to say last year, because I certainly did last year.
I can imagine.
Growing up, worried about them. They were always so, Mom taught piano, and she would, she'd be teaching piano in the living room and cooking dinner slowly in the kitchen and going back and forth, and then we'd have dinner. Did I worry about them? I think now, because my sister and I both live away from St. Louis and they're both still there, the thing that I think is that I wish I could be there more often. Mm-hmm. I'm going for a trip in a few weeks. Can't wait. And Charlie and I drove up twice during the pandemic, and we were there last fall and then again in the spring. So we've really tried to be there as much as we can, but I wish I were closer, and I wish I could be there more often.
Were your parents able to be there that first night that you conducted on Broadway?
Oh, yes. And we had some great pictures. The party was at Roseland, and Marsha Lewis, who, we love so much, was really took to my mom and dad, and she was hanging out with us a lot, and we laughed and scratched and had the best time.
I love her. I miss her so much.
I know, I miss her so much.
What would you, this is an interesting question. What would you find would be the hardest thing about you being in prison? Love that.
It crosses your mind once in a while. Like, I'm so happy to be free, and I don't even know. I wouldn't know where to start with that question. I wouldn't know where to start. Where's the piano?
And what is the most satisfying thing that you do each day or each week in your career?
Oh, in my career. Oh, well, it's always different, because I do so many different things and so many different projects and so many aspects to my life, which I think has always given me great joy in having a different thing. Okay, I have this thing at 54 Below next week, and now we're going off to the UK to do concerts with Barb, and now I'm good. I mean, it's always different, and I think that variety keeps me super joyous and moving forward, for sure.
And what would you go back and tell that 5-year-old John McDaniel living in St. Louis, Missouri, looking back over your life?
Oh, John, it's all going to be fine. We're all taken care of. We have to trust and know that it's going to be fine, and put one foot in front of the other and one note at a time. It's all going to be good.
That's great. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for being here. Don't go anywhere right now. I want to thank everybody for being here. You could have been anywhere for the last hour. Indeed. And you chose to spend it with us, and that means a lot to me, and I know I can speak for John when I say that. Sure. So again, if you enjoyed the show today, your first time here, subscribe on YouTube, hit the like button, leave a comment. That helps with the ranking of this video. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the 5th name that pops up, reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private message, a phone call. And let that person know what they mean in our lives. John McDaniel tells us early in our interview about David Friedman and making a comment. Well, David Friedman also says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And you never know what someone is going through right now. So take the moment to reach out. And I'm going to go a step further and say that if you're going to be out on a boat, make sure that you bring a skipper along.
Oh, that's clever.
Now, I'm going to leave the screen, John, and I'm going to give the platform to you yourself. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everyone who's watching right now. I thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you will continue to give.
Thanks, Richard.
And your body of worth is always worth celebrating. Thanks for being here today.
Right on. Thank you. Just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in. Keep going. Say yes to things. Get out in the world safely. And hopefully we're going to come back into a better world than we had to run inside from a year and a half ago. So be well.